They arrived not in fire and brimstone, but in silence and shadow, observers from a realm where logic was deity and emotion, a forgotten heresy. Their minds, vast, crystalline structures of pure reason, sifted through the cosmos, cataloging, analyzing, judging. And when their gaze fell upon Earth, upon humanity, they saw a species teetering on the brink, not of technological inadequacy, but of emotional self-destruction. To them, our passions, our joys, our sorrows, our fears, and most acutely our anger, were not vibrant expressions of life, but glaring, unpardonable flaws in an otherwise promising biological blueprint. They saw a species enslaved by neurochemical storms, driven by impulses that defied calculation, a planet riddled with the fallout of feelings. They saw weakness, inefficiency, a constant, predictable implosion. Human emotions, they concluded, were a profound, dangerous aberration. A cosmic mistake. They documented it all with cold, detached precision, ready to file humanity away as another fascinating, yet ultimately failed evolutionary experiment. Until they witnessed something that shattered their paradigms, something that forced a recalibration of their most fundamental assumptions. Until they saw righteous fury. This is the story of that cataclysmic reevaluation, and more importantly, it's a brutal look in the mirror for you. Because that same power, that same misunderstood, often condemned force, resides within you. And it's time you learn to recognize it, to respect it, and to wield it. Forget what you've been told about turning the other cheek in the face of all evil. Forget the saccharine platitudes that demand your passivity. Today, we delve into the raw, untamed power that made even the gods of logic pause and reconsider. Imagine a consciousness, if you can, that has purged itself of the turbulent currents we call feelings. Picture a civilization that operates with the flawless precision of a quantum computer, where every action is a derivative of pure, unadulterated logic. Their worlds are marvels of harmonious order, their societies seamless constructs of cooperative efficiency. Conflict, as they understand it, is a mathematical imbalance to be corrected, not a clash of wills fueled by pride or pain. For eons, they had observed the universe, encountering nascent civilizations, cataloging their rise and often their fall. The common denominator in so many failures, uncontrolled emotional responses. Species that devoured themselves in fits of rage, that succumbed to collective despair, that made catastrophic decisions based on fear or fleeting euphoria. When they turned their analytical instruments towards humanity, the data screamed danger, volatile, unstable. They saw wars ignited by wounded pride, economies shattered by greed and panic, relationships torn asunder by jealousy and resentment. They observed individuals paralyzed by anxiety, communities fractured by suspicion, progress stalled by apathy born of disappointment. Our art, our music, our literature, while complex, often seemed to them elaborate justifications or explorations of these very emotional flaws. Love, a force we champion, appeared to them a source of irrational vulnerability, intense attachment leading to devastating loss and erratic behavior. Grief, a profound sorrow, seemed an utter waste of processing power, a descent into debilitating negativity. Joy, while perhaps briefly observed as a positive energy spike, was often followed by a crash, an unsustainable high. And anger was the most perplexing, the most demonstrably destructive. They saw its petty manifestations, the road rage, the squabbles over trivialities, the seething bitterness that poisoned minds and bodies. They saw its larger, more terrifying forms, the blind hatred fueling genocide, the vindictive cruelty inflicted in the name of twisted justice, the explosive violence that ripped through societies. To these alien intellects, human anger was a primary symptom of our inherent design flaw. A surge of chemicals that overrode reason, that led to predictably disastrous outcomes. It was, In their assessment, a vestige of a primitive past, a neurological misfiring that a truly advanced species would have long since edited out of its genome or conditioned out of its behavior. They might have theorized that human evolution had simply not yet reached a stage where the prefrontal cortex could consistently and effectively govern the more primal limbic system. Our capacity for great intellectual achievement was constantly, tragically, undermined by this internal emotional insurgency. We were, in their eyes, a paradox, capable of splitting the atom but not of controlling a temper tantrum, capable of composing symphonies but not of resolving a petty dispute without emotional escalation. Our emotions made us unpredictable, and in the grand, ordered calculus of the universe, unpredictability was a dangerous variable. They saw these emotions as shackles, binding us to a cycle of suffering and self-sabotage, preventing us from achieving our true potential, whatever that might be. We were a cosmic tragedy in progress, a brilliant flame consuming itself with its own uncontrolled heat. Now let's be brutally honest with ourselves. From a certain detached perspective, aren't they partially right? Look around, look within. How often have your own uncontrolled emotions led you astray? How many times has a flash of anger cost you a relationship, an opportunity, your own peace of mind? How often has fear held you back from pursuing what you truly desire, or despair made you give up when perseverance was all that was needed? We are undeniably messy creatures. Our emotional landscape is a chaotic, beautiful, terrifying, and often contradictory terrain. The surge of adrenaline and cortisol that accompanies rage can be incredibly destructive. The fog of depression can rob us of all motivation. The sting of jealousy can turn love into a possessive nightmare. We are capable of breathtaking acts of kindness fueled by empathy and horrifying acts of cruelty fueled by hatred. This duality, this internal war, is the human condition. The aliens weren't wrong to see the potential for disaster in our emotional makeup. They weren't wrong to identify the patterns of self-destruction. Where they erred, initially, was in their generalization, in their failure to discern the nuances within the storm. They saw all strong emotion as a deviation from the optimal state of placid rationality. They saw the fire but failed to distinguish between a wildfire consuming everything in its path and the focused flame of a forge, capable of shaping raw material into something strong and purposeful. They hadn't yet encountered the signal within the noise, the specific frequency of an emotion that didn't just tear down but built up, that didn't just react, but responded with profound, albeit fierce, intentionality. They had cataloged the symptoms of emotional sickness, but they hadn't yet witnessed emotional power in its most potent, most disciplined, and most awe-inspiring form. This brings us to righteous fury. This isn't your garden-variety anger. It's not the infantile rage of a denied whim. It's not the bitter resentment of a perceived slight. Righteous fury is a different entity altogether. It is an incandescent moral clarity. It is the deep, visceral, and overwhelmingly powerful response to profound injustice, to the violation of sacred principles, to the abuse of the vulnerable, to the deliberate infliction of cruelty. It's not primarily about you. It's about something larger. It's born from a place of deep conviction, often from a place of deep empathy for those who are suffering, or from a profound respect for truth and fairness that has been brutally transgressed. Think of it, the parent who, with almost supernatural strength, defends their child from harm. That isn't just anger. It's a primal, protective fury rooted in the deepest love. Think of the citizen who stands alone against a totalitarian regime, their voice shaking but their eyes blazing with an unquenchable fire of defiance. That isn't just frustration. It's a fury born of an unyielding demand for freedom and dignity. Think of the whistleblower who risks everything, career, reputation, safety, to expose corruption that harms thousands. That isn't just annoyance. It's a fury fueled by an unwavering commitment to truth. Righteous fury has distinct characteristics that separate it from its baser cousins. Firstly, it is often accompanied by a startling clarity of thought, not a fog of irrationality. While the physiological response might be intense, the racing heart, the surge of adrenaline, the mind can become incredibly focused. Priorities become crystal clear. Complications fall away. There is a singular, burning purpose to stop the wrong, to protect the innocent, to restore justice. Secondly, it is not primarily self-serving. While one's own values are being defended, the impetus is often the defense of others, or the defense of a principle that benefits the collective. It's a shield, not just a sword for personal vengeance. Thirdly, it possesses an incredible, almost terrifying power of endurance. It can sustain effort against overwhelming odds long after mere frustration or irritation would have fizzled out. It taps into reserves of strength and resilience many don't even know they possess. It can make the timid brave and the hesitant decisive. It's the kind of anger that doesn't just flare up and die down. It can burn with a steady, intense heat, fueling relentless action. It's the difference between a sputtering firecracker and a controlled nuclear reaction. One is chaotic and fleeting. The other is a source of immense, directed power. This is the phenomenon the alien observers had not yet properly accounted for in their neat equations of human fallibility. They had seen the destructive temper tantrums, the petty squabbles, the wars born of ego. They had not yet witnessed the cold, controlled burn of righteous fury in the face of true evil. They had not seen a human being, or a group of human beings, so utterly possessed by a moral imperative that they became, for a time, something more than flawed, emotional creatures. They became forces of nature. So what was the catalyst? What was the until they saw moment? It wouldn't have been a single, isolated incident, perhaps, but a pattern of them, or one so stark, so undeniable, that it shattered their previous conclusions. Imagine their sensors, designed to detect emotional spikes as indicators of instability, suddenly registering an off-the-charts reading. But this time the output wasn't chaos. It was focus. It was precision. Perhaps they observed a small, outgunned group of rebels, fighting not for territory or resources, but for the simple right to exist, to be free from an oppressive, genocidal regime. The aliens would have calculated their odds of survival as statistically negligible. Logic dictated surrender or annihilation. Yet these humans fought on, not with the wild, desperate flailing of cornered animals, but with a terrifying, calculated ferocity. Every move was imbued with an intensity that belied their numbers, their faces grim, set, their eyes burning with a light that wasn't madness, but something far more potent. They fought to protect the families hidden away, to buy time for escape, to make a stand that screamed defiance even in the face of certain death. The aliens would see the immense personal cost, the sacrifice, the willingness to endure unimaginable hardship, all fueled by this fury against the injustice of their persecution. It wasn't about personal gain. It was about principle, about protecting the innocent, about refusing to let evil triumph unopposed. Or maybe they witnessed an individual, an ordinary person, confronting a corrupt system head-on. Someone who, armed with nothing but truth and an unshakable conviction, exposed a network of exploitation that preyed on the weakest members of society. The alien observers would see this person facing threats, ostracism, immense pressure to back down. Logic would suggest self-preservation. Yet this individual pressed on, their anger not a wild, uncontrolled outburst, but a carefully channeled instrument, meticulously gathering evidence, speaking with unwavering clarity, enduring the attacks with a resilience that seemed to draw strength from the very injustice they fought. Their fury was a scalpel, dissecting the lies, exposing the rotten core. It was a shield, deflecting the intimidation. It was a beacon, inspiring others who had been too afraid to speak. Perhaps they saw it in the response to a natural disaster or a horrific accident. Amidst the chaos and fear, they would see individuals, fueled by a desperate, furious need to save lives, performing acts of incredible bravery and selflessness. Running into burning buildings, pulling strangers from rubble, working for days without rest. Their faces etched with exhaustion, but their actions driven by an almost violent compassion, a fury against death and suffering itself. This wasn't the panic they'd catalogued. This was a ferocious determination to defy destruction, to snatch life back from the brink. What would the aliens see in these displays? They'd see an emotion that paradoxically created order out of chaos, an emotion that sharpened intellect rather than dulling it, an emotion that inspired profound courage in the face of overwhelming fear, an emotion that wasn't self-destructive but self-transcending, pushing individuals beyond their perceived limits in service of a greater good. They would observe that this righteous fury wasn't blind. It was highly discerning. It targeted specific wrongs. It sought specific remedies. It had an underlying rationality that was perhaps more complex, more deeply rooted in fundamental principles of survival and societal well-being than their purely mathematical logic could initially comprehend. They would see that this particular flavor of human anger wasn't a flaw. It was a goddamn immune response, a defense mechanism for the soul of the species, a powerful, albeit painful, catalyst for positive change, for justice, for the protection of what is truly valuable. It was the universe's way of saying enough. The alien observers, confronted with such irrefutable evidence, would be forced into a profound reassessment. Their neat categories would begin to crumble. The label flaw would no longer suffice. This righteous fury was something else entirely. It was a power source. It was a moral compass with a thruster engine. It was an expression of will so potent it could bend reality, or at least bend the wills of those who sought to impose an unjust reality. They might begin to understand that a species without this capacity, a species that met profound evil with placid indifference or purely logical calculation, might be a species that ultimately acquiesces to its own extinction or enslavement. Perhaps their own emotionless perfection had a hidden cost, a lack of this driving force, this fierce intolerance for egregious wrongs. Had they, in their pursuit of pure logic, sterilized themselves of something vital, something that, while messy and dangerous, was also a critical component of resilience, and the will to not just survive, but to strive for something better, something more just. They might see it as an evolutionary adaptation of immense sophistication, an emotional state that could mobilize every resource of an individual or a group towards a critical, values-driven goal. Not just a bug, but a feature, albeit one that required immense wisdom and control to operate effectively. They might even, in their own alien way, begin to respect it, perhaps even to cautiously admire its raw, untamed power and its surprising capacity for constructive application. The universe, they might conclude, was far more complex than their initial models allowed. And humanity, for all its glaring imperfections, possessed a fire that could, when properly channeled, illuminate the darkest corners. This fury, they'd realize, wasn't the enemy of reason. It was reason ignited, reason given fangs and claws and an unbreakable spine. It was the point at which the tolerance for bullshit, for evil, for complacency simply evaporated, replaced by a terrible and beautiful resolve. Now let's bring this home. This isn't just a thought experiment about hypothetical aliens. This is about you. This is about the power that lies dormant or perhaps misdirected within you. You live in a world rife with injustice, with cruelty, with exploitation, with deliberate ignorance. You see it every day in small ways and large. And what is your response? Do you feel that flicker, that spark of outrage, only to quickly extinguish it with cynicism or fear or apathy? Do you tell yourself it's not your problem, that you're powerless, that getting angry is negative or unproductive? Society often conditions us to suppress this kind of anger. We're told it's impolite, disruptive, unspiritual. We're encouraged to be calm, to be understanding, to see all sides, even when one side is demonstrably monstrous. And yes, uncontrolled, misdirected rage is destructive. Petty grievances, ego-driven tantrums, these are the emotional flaws the aliens rightly identified. But righteous fury is not that. It is a vital, necessary force. To suppress it entirely is to become complicit. It's to allow the weeds of injustice to grow unchecked until they choke out everything good. The brutal truth is your apathy, your carefully cultivated detachment in the face of things that should make your blood boil, is a weakness. It's a betrayal of your own moral compass. That feeling of profound wrongness, that surge of energy when you witness a genuine transgression, that is not something to be ashamed of or medicated away. It is a signal. It is a call to action. It is your deepest self saying, "This is unacceptable. This must be challenged." So, how do you harness this power? How do you distinguish true righteous fury from its counterfeit cousins? First, examine the source. Is your anger rooted in ego, in personal inconvenience, in a bruised sense of entitlement? Or is it rooted in a violation of a core principle, in empathy for the suffering of others, in a clear-sighted recognition of injustice? Righteous fury has a clean burn. It doesn't leave the sticky residue of selfishness. Second, observe its effect on your clarity. Does it cloud your judgment, making you lash out indiscriminately? Or does it bring a sharp, almost painful focus to your mind, clarifying the problem and illuminating potential paths of action? True righteous fury often feels less like a chaotic explosion and more like a laser beam. Third, what is its aim? Is it purely to inflict pain, to tear down, to get revenge? Or is its ultimate aim constructive, to protect, to correct, to restore, to build something better in place of what is wrong? Righteous fury, even in its fierceness, often carries a seed of hope, a vision for a more just future. Once you identify true righteous fury, the next step is not to suppress it, but to channel it. This is where energy mastery comes in. This is where you transform raw emotional power into effective action. This is not about screaming into the void. It's about strategic, sustained effort. Your righteous fury can fuel your discipline. It can make you get up early and work late on that project that aims to solve a problem you care deeply about. It can give you the courage to speak truth to power, even when your voice shakes. It can drive you to educate yourself, to become an expert, so your arguments are not just passionate, but also well-informed and irrefutable. It can fuel your creativity, inspiring art, music, writing that exposes injustice and galvanizes others. It can make you a fierce protector of those who cannot protect themselves. It can help you to set boundaries, to say no to that which violates your values personally and collectively. It can be the fire that burns away your own complacency, your own fear, your own inertia. It can be the force that helps you destroy weakness, the weakness of looking away, the weakness of quiet tolerance for the intolerable. This isn't an invitation to become a perpetually angry person. That is exhausting and counterproductive. It's an invitation to recognize that within the spectrum of human emotion, there is a specific type of anger that is not only justified but essential. It's about selective engagement. It's about recognizing that some things are worth getting furiously, passionately, and unyieldingly angry about. And then, it's about using that sacred fire not to immolate yourself or others indiscriminately, but to forge change, to temper your resolve, to become an unstoppable force for what you know, deep in your bones, is right. Think of the great moral leaders, the great reformers, the great protectors throughout history. Do you think they were always calm and serene? Do you think they looked upon slavery or genocide or systemic oppression and felt only mild disapproval? No. Many of them were possessed by a profound, driving, righteous fury. It was the engine of their relentless pursuit of justice. They learned to control it, to direct it, to use its immense energy to move mountains. You have that same potential. That fire is in your DNA. It's a legacy of ancestors who fought for survival, for fairness, for a better world. To deny it is to deny a fundamental part of your strength. The challenge is not to extinguish it, but to become its master, to ensure it serves your highest values, not your lowest impulses. When you feel that righteous fury rise, don't shrink from it. Interrogate it. Understand its roots. And if it is pure, if it is just, then embrace it. Let it sharpen your mind, fortify your will, and guide your actions. Let it burn away your fear and your apathy. Let it make you uncomfortable enough to act. Because in a world that often seems determined to grind down the human spirit, your righteous fury might be the very thing that keeps your soul, and perhaps a small part of the world around you, alive and fighting. It's the point where you stop being a passive observer of life's injustices and become an active participant in the struggle for what is good and true. The alien observers in their cold, logical ships eventually came to understand. They saw that this fury, this uniquely human fire, wasn't a glitch in the system. It was, in its own way, a form of higher-order programming, a failsafe against moral entropy. They saw that a species capable of such profound, principled anger was a species capable of profound change, of incredible resilience, of defending its values against any odds. They might have even recorded a new entry in their vast cosmic database. Humanity, emotional profile highly volatile, prone to irrational outbursts, however, possesses a rare and potent capacity for righteous fury, a morally driven emotional state capable of generating extraordinary focus, courage, and transformative action. Not a flaw, but a complex, high-stakes feature. Approach with caution and perhaps a degree of respect. So the next time you witness an injustice that makes your heart pound and your blood heat, don't dismiss it as just getting angry. Pause, examine. Is this the petty fire of ego or the sacred flame of righteous fury? If it is the latter, then you have a choice. You can dampen it down, let it sputter out into resignation and cynicism. Or you can tend to it, channel its ferocious energy, and use it to become an instrument of the change you wish to see. The choice, as always, is yours. But understand this. A world without righteous fury is a world where evil wins by default. Your capacity for this powerful, moral anger is not a weakness to be overcome. It is a superpower waiting to be wielded. Stop apologizing for it. Stop suppressing it. Learn its language, respect its power, and let it fuel your journey towards becoming an unstoppable force for good in a world that desperately needs it. Let it carve you into someone who doesn't just tolerate the unacceptable, but actively, fiercely, and righteously fights to change it. That is the true legacy of this flaw the aliens came to revere. That is your human birthright.